Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going through my round 23 AFL tips for this week. So let's see how we did last week. Last week I ended up having a pretty decent round. I will say I got the 7 out of 9 and I actually got a lot of correct and some extra points for the correct scoreline. So let's see how we did on the Thursday. Hawthorn Collingwood. This was an absolute thrashing to the Hawks and credit to them. They gave up a massive response and obviously didn't help Collingwood Jeremy Howe coming out of the game early, but they just look a bit lost at the moment, the Pies. They've slipped down to, I believe, third now, just above the Dockers. But yeah, look, their system, especially coming out of halfbacks, just looking really poor. But yeah, look, disappointing there for the Pies, but that's a massive win there for the Hawks. Then I went with the Cats by a bit more of a margin than it actually was. They only won by 44 on the end. Credit to Essendon. They did actually play some pretty decent football, but the Cats were always too strong. Jess had a bit more of a quieter game, only kicking 4, which is still very good. But yeah, moving on to the next game on the Saturday now, where we had the Saints and the Tigers. I got the correct scoreline for this one. Went the Saints by 16. They actually won by 4. So yeah, look, it was a really ugly win. It really was. I thought we had a really good first quarter, but we just went too defensive for the rest of the game. And I honestly thought Richmond were going to run over the top of us there, but we still found a way to win, and that's 3 on the trot now, which is really good as a Saints fan. Then we had the first upset in a while where we had the Sydney beating Brisbane. Now, I was about to change my tip considering Brisbane's outs, but credit to the Swans there. They're amazing, and that's massive for the Lions. They could honestly miss the 8 now. Got the Gold Coast tip correct with a pretty correct scoreline. Simple there, but the Blues did rally back a bit. Got the Freo tip correct. Geez, that was a pretty good game to watch. Alex Pearce obviously kicking the game winner. But credit to Port. It was a much better response. And yeah, look, they look so much better. Got the GWS tip correct again with, that's the third correct scoreline now I've got in a row for the extra points. So that was good there. Just the Giants were always going to win. Got another correct tip with the correct scoreline in the Melbourne Western Bulldogs game. The Bulldogs ended up winning by 6. And geez, the season was really on the line there. Credit to the D's for really pushing the Dogs to the sword. But they got over the Melbourne Hoodoo at the MCG. They managed to knock off the D's, and they still keep their final chances alive with a really good percentage. And then to finish off the round, I thought I was honestly going to get a close scoreline because this was going to be a thrashing. But credit to the Eagles. It was only 9 points in the end to the Crows. And yeah, look, the Eagles really stuck with them for about 3.5 quarters, to be honest with the Crows. So that's definitely a positive for them. But let's get into the tips for this week. And for the first time in this season, we do not have a Thursday night game, but we do have a double header on the Friday. And that first game being a game that, let's be honest, no one's really going to be watching apart from me and people that go for the Saints and the Bombers, because we do have Essendon taking on the Saints now. This is probably going to be a game that no one's going to be watching, and as soon as the Freo Lions game starts, everyone's going to be switching over, kind of like the Bulldogs-Essendon match, which we saw when there was a doubleheader a couple of weeks ago. Everyone switched to GWS Sydney, but this match is still going to be played, and the Saints now have won 3 on the trot. As I said, it was really an ugly win against Richmond. I was disappointed, considering that we have been playing really competitive and football that looks much more convincing against top 8 sides, where we did go on that losing streak, but we played some really good football. But against North and Richmond, we haven't really seen that, and credit to the Tigers because their pressure was good. They just had a couple of moments late which did keep us in the game, and over the end it was still a Ross win. We were able to get over the line there for Ross Lyon and Jack Steele in his 200th game, but I just didn't know why we shut away after that pretty decent first quarter. It's a bit disappointing, and at the end of the day, we still won. It doesn't matter. We're not going to make the 8. Percentage doesn't even matter. So, still got the win there. As for the Bombers, well, like I said, they played some pretty decent football. It was a poor start, but they did only hold Jeremy Cameron to 4 goals, which I think a lot of people were expecting that game to be at least 70 points. But credit to the Bombers, they were able to score a bit more, and some of their younger guys look really good. So, this is a game that I feel like as a Saints fan we should be winning, and I'm probably going to back us in here, but you never know. We don't usually play the Bombers well, although we did win our last game against them by over 50 points. So yeah, look, I do think Essendon might also be without Nick Martin and possibly Zach Merritt, so I just can't really see them winning this game. Maybe there are a chance. They've lost 10 in a row. They'll be up and about. It's their home game. They'll have their fans behind them, but I feel like the Saints, especially with Essendon's outs, if Zach Merritt is also out, we really should be winning this game against the Baby Bombers. So I'm going to go with the Saints here. I'm not overly confident, but I feel like we should still be getting the result here. So I'm going to go the Saints by 20 points at Marvel. We head over to the West now, where we do have a massive game, a really exciting contest between the Dockers and the Lions. And we start off with Brisbane. They were really disappointing against the Swans, despite their outs with Brandon Starcevich being a late out. And obviously they are without Lockie Neal for that game and coming into this game. And look, I felt like the Swans kind of just got on top in that third quarter or towards the back end, just before half time. They were able to pile on some goals late, and some of the Lions players didn't step up. The Ashcroft brothers, though, had a really good game in that one, racking up heaps of disposals. As for the Dockers, well, they were pretty gallant against the Power. They were down yet again at three-quarter time, and well, they are the comeback kings. They're not the comeback kings by much, but they always seem to be down at three-quarter time, and they do be able to find these wins. So you do have to give credit to Justin Longmuir, who is under the pump, but it is good coaching when you are down at three-quarter time to come back and win the game. So that's the only thing that is going to be holding back Freo in these finals games if they are going to end up making finals, which they really shouldn't, and going to cost them winning premiership. They do need to play the four quarters, and I feel like they don't have that ability. You know, they gave up a lot of goals to the Power in that second quarter. I think they gave up 8 or 9, so this is a game I feel like they should be winning. They're back at home. It's a Friday night game. I feel like they'll be up and about. And with Brisbane's outs at the moment, they should be winning this. They'll be without Neil. Brandon Starcevich will be back, though, to help out their defence for Brisbane. But I could really see Brisbane getting the result here if they do just play their game style and are able to execute well and just really shut Fremantle down in a couple of areas. But I think I'm going to go the Dockers. They're at home. I feel like, you know, they have been in some really good form after that Sydney loss. I think they've won 11 out of their last 12. So I'm going to go the Dockers here in a really good game by 4 points at Optus. Then we move over to the Saturday now, where we do head over to People First Stadium, where we do have the Suns taking on the Giants. Two sides that have been in relatively decent form. We'll start off with the Giants. Look, against North, they were always going to win that game. I feel like North, they did kind of get outplayed by North Melbourne in the second half a little bit more. The North did come back a bit, but the Giants had won at the end of the day. So it didn't really matter. Their skipper was back in Toby Green for this game, and he made a massive difference. Look, they were just able to put on much more of a score, kicking the 20 goals, so that helped out there. As for the Suns, well, they had a pretty decent win over the Blues. The Blues did really come back in that fourth quarter, and they just looked like they had some more energy. They just couldn't put it on the scoreboard. And when the Suns did really hold up under pressure, and that's a game that probably last year or the year before they may have lost, but they held up strong, and Ben King, he had a field day, kicking 6 goals. So the Suns, they're back at home. They do not have a good record against the Giants, no matter home or away. I think they've lost their last 4 against them, and I think they've only ever beaten the Giants twice in their whole history, considering that the Giants, the newest side in the comp, just after them. So it's the expansion cup here, but this should be a pretty decent game, I feel like. But I'm slightly leaning towards the Giants. I know this game is back at home for the Suns, where, you know, they're coming off a good win against the Tigers back at home, but it'll be a long flight up from Melbourne. So it's going to be interesting. They're back at home, but the Giants, they always seem to play the Suns well. We did see them get up in a bit of a comeback earlier on in the season, back in round 16 or something. So I'm going to go the Giants here in a bit of an upset. I feel like they know they need to win this, and I feel like they will respond us after that Bulldogs loss, and which you could say was a good response against North, but I feel like they'll show a bit more of a response in this game. I'm going to go the Giants in an upset by 17 points. At People First Stadium. Another dead rubber game now here, where we do have Carlton taking on Port Adelaide, which I feel like should still be an interesting contest. Two sides that are around similar position, and we'll get to the Blues. Well, I felt like you know, they were pretty decent against the Suns, but they just lacked the same issues again with their ball movement. Was just a bit sloppy, and the Suns were a bit more of the better side. But credit to the Blues for actually showing something under Michael Voss. Obviously, the big news coming out of them for this week is that they have signed Michael Voss for 1 more year, so he will be there for 2026 at the helm. So, yeah, look, that's certainly how they want to going to play when they do get a lot of their injuries back for next season under Michael Voss, which we did see in that fourth quarter. But they were never really going to come back, because every time they went inside 50, they were just really sloppy. But credit to them for that. As for the Power, well, they put in a much better performance after getting smacked by Geelong. down in Geelong. And in the showdown back at home, they looked really good. And considering they're playing Fremantle, I thought they played really well. They look back to their old game style, and they really look like they wanted to win for Ken Hinkley. Unfortunately, though, Alex Pearce kicked the game winner, but you do have to say it was a much better performance. They look like what they can be at home, which we have seen in the past couple of years, that almost the power, just turning it on really in that second quarter. I think they kicked 8 goals, it was, in that second quarter. But I feel like back at home, the Blues should be winning this. This is a really 50-50 game. Both banged up, injured sides. It just means nothing. But I'm going to go the Blues here just because this game is being played at Marvel. I could see this really going anyway. But I'm going to go the Blues here by 12 points at Marvel. Then we move on to the Saturday Twilight game now at the G, where we do have the Hawks and the Ds. We'll start off with the Hawks. It was a massive response after going down to the Crows. And when you do really look at it, they are kind of back in form now, Hawthorn, because they did play really well in that Adelaide game. They were just a bit unlucky, and they were leading at three-quarter time in that game. But look, against the Pies, they were just really strong around the ground. Obviously, Jeremy Howe did go out, which did make it a bit easier for them. But at the end of the day, they did just look like the better side, and it really does give them a good chance to make finals now if they can get a big win here. Sorry, and maybe against Brisbane next week. As for the D's, they were pretty strong. They obviously Simon Goodwin is not there anymore. I don't think I mentioned that, and under Troy Chaplin, they just looked a bit more exciting. And what they can sometimes be when they can master the opposition's game style, they can be a bit more attacking. They ended up kicking 15 goals and almost won the game and almost ended the Bulldogs' finals chances. So that would have been a great win for the D's. Unfortunately, they couldn't get over the hump. But look, the Hawks should really be winning this. This is a sneaky chance for an upset here for the D's. But the Hawks, they're really got under pressure. They know they have to win this game. Otherwise, it's going to be very tough. So I think the Hawks will win this game. I just think they're the better round side. And I'm going to go the Hawks to win this by 27 points at the MCG. Then this is a massive game now at the Adelaide Oval. On the Saturday night, we have the Crows taking on the Pies. Now, this is a massive game for both sides. You feel like if the Crows do win this, they should have that top spot locked up now. As for the Pies, well, they were just really disappointing against the Hawks on the weekend. They struggled to score and they just made too many mistakes coming out their back half 50 and just around the ground, which just really costed them in some areas. And yeah, at the end of the day, it was a blowout, and the complete opposite of what we saw back in round 13, I believe it was. Just so different. As for the Crows, well, they came off a gallant win against the Eagles in a game where I feel like they didn't even play that bad. I just thought the Eagles' pressure was really good, but they were put under the pump. They probably should have won by more. They'll be disappointed with it, but they don't have to be winning these games by a lot, Adelaide. They have the best percentage in the comp, sitting at 140 plus, so they don't really need to get any more percentage boosters really to finish top. They just need to win these games. And this is an interesting stat that Collingwood have won the last 12 against the Crows, I believe. And in Adelaide, they do play really well. I believe at the Adelaide Oval, the Pies haven't just beaten the Crows the last 6 times. I believe they've won their last 8 at the Adelaide Oval. So yes, Collingwood are out of form and they'll be wanting to win this game, but I feel like they really could win this game, just considering their form at the Adelaide Oval, but they will be without some of their guys. Obviously, Jeremy Howe, just disappointing going back out with an injury. Prayers out to him, but I feel like the Crows can finally take the monkey off the back. We always see a good game between these two sides with the Pies getting up. We saw the Pies get up earlier at the MCG, but this is different. I feel like the Crows should be winning this. They need to show. This is the game where they can really show some maturity, knocking off Collingwood. They're at home. They have the fans up and about. That we want to be responding after last week's a little bit disappointing performance. So even though they won, I'm going to go the Crows here in a pretty decent game by 15 points at the Adelaide Oval. Moving on to Ninja Stadium down in Hobart, we have another dead rubber game, but again, kind of like the Carlton Port Adelaide match, should be a decently close game. I mean, we do have North taking on Richmond now. We'll start off with North. They currently do sit under Richmond, and if Richmond win this game, they're pretty much finished above North, which would be really disappointing for the Roos, considering that this has been going on for 6 years now, and to finish below Richmond, who have only just entered their rebuild, would be very disappointing. So they actually would want to be winning this game. They could bottom out for another year with draft picks, but they would want to be winning this game. They've got most of their injuries now back. the Roos. And against the Giants, they weren't that bad. They were still able to score, but it was just the same old mistakes they made. And the Orange Tsunami, especially at Monaco, is really hard to stop. As for the Tigers, they obviously went down to the Saints, and the main reason was obviously they didn't play their best footy, even though it was still a really competitive game. They just couldn't score, but they just made some really terrible errors going inside 50. I think late in the game, one of their players was kicking inside 50. They had lynched there, plenty of options, but they stuffed it up. And the end of the day, the Saints made them pay and ended up getting the win there. Just this game being in Hobart, I feel like North Melbourne probably should be winning this game. The Tigers do have a couple of outs coming into this game, and now they're pretty much playing their young guys. Well, they have been for pretty much the whole season, but I feel like Richmond will be going for the draft pick here. So North, they need to really win this game just to show a bit of less embarrassment. They beat the Tigers early on at the MCG, where the Tigers were in some pretty decent form. So I feel like they can do it again here, and I'm going to go the Roos down in Hobart. In a game that really could go anyway, but I feel like the Roos should be winning here. I'm going to go the Roos here by 10 points down in Hobart. We head over to Sydney now, where we do have the Cats taking on the Swans. This should be a really good game, considering this is at the SCG. Now, we'll start off with the Swans. What a win that was. Obviously, their season is done and dusted, but against the Lions, who had been in massive response against Collingwood winning at the G, it was a really big task to go over there and win, but they took advantage of Brandon Starcevich and Lachie Neale being out. They ended up winning the game, so credit to them, and that puts massive implications on Brisbane's season. As for the Cats, well, obviously they got the job done over the Baby Bombers. Not really much to be said there. They will be trying to focus on Jezza kicking 100 here, and against the Cats, against the Swans, it's going to be tough. Sorry, because Nick Blakey, I believe, might be playing on it. I'm not sure, but it's going to be tough to see the Cats winning this game. I do know that they are the favourites coming into this game, but the Swans, they've been in some really good form, and now that they are back at the SCG, I feel like this is a massive danger game for the Cats. The Swans, they'll be looking to stuff up team seasons, like teams like Freo and Hawthorn will take advantage of the Swans being there since they don't play them, but this is going to be massive for the Cats here, but I feel like this should be a very good game, but I'm going to be going the Cats here. I know this is at the SCG, where this could really be anyone's game, but I reckon the Cats, they'll get up. They'll just survive the tough task down in Sydney. I'm going to go the Cats to win this by 7 points at the SCG. And to end off round 23 now, not as much of a tougher game to tip, but we have the Bulldogs taking on the Eagles at Marvel Stadium. We'll start off with the Eagles, and it was a really good performance against Adelaide. It really was. They were honestly looking like they were going to get their second win of the season, and when we do say the Crows ran over the top of the Eagles in that last quarter, it's kind of not really. It's a bit of an overstatement, really. The Eagles really, just in the last 5 minutes, really capitulated, but the thing that really kept them in the game, the Eagles, and they were able to execute well, was their pressure. I feel like Adelaide were actually played decent. Well, Adelaide obviously didn't play well, but the West Coast defence and their setup when Adelaide were taking kickouts was just really good. And their pressure around the ball, I think that was one of their higher pressure running games. They made the Crows stumble and that. So if they do bring that pressure against the Dogs, it certainly will be an interesting game to watch. But credit to the Eagles there. Obviously, they still went down, and the Crows were the much better team in the end. And some of their stars like Thilthorpe and Isaac Rankin really just stepped up, and West Coast couldn't defend. But as for the Bulldogs, well, they keep their season alive, and this is a game that I don't think they'll be going into looking much at the Eagles. Now, the year before, sorry, in 2023, this was massive. The Eagles did manage to knock off the Dogs, so there is a chance the Eagles, they'll be looking at that game. Maybe there is a bit of hope, but I feel like the Dogs are a much better side, and they know that they actually do have to win this game. Otherwise, their season is done and dusted, and it is down to the final 8. But I'm going to go the Bulldogs here. I just can't really see the Eagles getting up. Maybe they'll be competitive, but I think the Dogs, they don't need to win this game by much, but they probably would be, just to make sure the Eagles do not get within reach. But I'm going to go the Dogs to win this by 51 points to end off the round. So everyone, there are quite a few tough games to tip for this round. Let me know your thoughts and predictions down below in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.